Hi, Roger McGould is here with Peter Guagenti, who's the CMO of MemSQL. Welcome.
Thank you.
And we want to start off with what trends are you seeing in this kind of insight-driven economy we face?
It's very interesting. So we're seeing a number of trends emerging, and actually O'Reilly's done a very good job of promoting some of the more interesting ones. I think one of the most exciting for us is ML and AI, right? I think we've been talking about ML and AI for a long time, but I feel like in the last few years, we've really seen an acceleration inside of the average enterprise. It's not just the big software companies, big technology companies. We're now seeing democratization of models. We're seeing a lot more real-world application of ML and AI towards common business problems. And I feel like we're now starting to see companies climbing the maturity curve from historical analytics, sort of looking backwards at what happened, increasingly into looking at what is happening and then trying to predict what will happen and drive the future. That's the biggest trend I think we're seeing. As a database company, we're seeing some others. The biggest challenge around ML and AI is not the algorithms, it's not data science, it's data. It's actually being able to aggregate and work with your data in a meaningful way. We're seeing that accelerating. We're seeing a lot of companies waking up and realizing the next generation of their business, their applications and analytics that are going to power their business are going to require different data infrastructure than they've had in the past. And so there's increasing demands on companies like MemSQL to provide stuff that'll work with streaming and real-time and historical data together. And we're also seeing now the next wave of data moving to the cloud. We saw, starting 10 plus years ago now, we saw application data move to the cloud first. It's fairly low risk, very high reward, for time to market. The next wave was data warehousing, historical data at scale, great commoditization to move it to the cloud. It's very cost effective. Now the crown jewels are starting to move to cloud infrastructure. And that's really exciting. We're seeing a lot of the analysts talking about that. We're obviously being a cloud-native operational database. We love that, right? Because that's really good for our future. But we're also seeing maturity now in cloud infrastructure and in multi-cloud and hybrid cloud strategy that make that possible. I think for those of us who've been in cloud-native for a very long time, it's nice to see now this level of maturity that means we can unlock that flexibility while not giving up control.
So, given that more is going on, are companies really getting the full value from their data?
They're not. And this is, I think, the thing that most CEOs should start paying attention to. I think it's very easy for a CEO to look and say, well, data is the domain of my CIO. They're going to take care of it. She'll know what to do with it. But if you really look at the brands that have really started to establish dominance in the last 5 to 10 years. I would make an argument that they have done so on the back of leveraging data better than their competitors. And specifically operational data, right? It's not looking back and understanding what had occurred. It's leveraging data to make decisions in real time and running predictions and running machine learning to make better decisions than you could otherwise. And that's a big deal, right? I think if you look at a company like Uber, I would argue they use data to completely change and revolutionize transportation. They know exactly where to place cars using models, know exactly how much to charge you based on what you're willing to pay. That has dropped a bomb in the middle of the transportation business. We've seen the same in financial services with companies like Goldman Sachs treating themselves as a technology company. I think every business is in that place. If I were a CEO in a traditional business right now, I would be getting real smart real fast about how my data is being stored, how my data is being used, and asking the hard questions internally to say, are we prepared to be able to actually get the maximum value from our data to build competitive advantage? Because your competitors are. They are going to do it. And we're at a point in time now, I believe, where we're back to we went from digital transformation, which changed a bunch of industries, to now a data revolution. It's the next wave of digital transformation. And I think there are a lot of businesses that will not make it through.
Given the background you just said, what can someone do now? What factors are at play in getting that knowledge?
So realistically, there needs to be a lot more thought given to how we collect, store, and analyze data, right? And what we're doing to make it possible for more of the business to make use of it. Big data came with a big promise, right? Which was, if you get all of your data in one place, you're going to be able to do amazing things with it. Unfortunately, the first wave of tools that most of us embraced didn't ever fulfill on that promise. And while data infrastructure sounds really boring, so did ERP systems in the 80s. And you look at the businesses that completely took over their category by getting supply chain better than others. CRM in the 90s, but the companies that became customer-centric first were the ones who dominated, I think we're in the same place with data now, and I think executives need to be paying a lot more attention to how their data is being stored internally and asking themselves the fundamental question of, if I have a big idea, if I have an application I want to do, or if I have a decision I want to make, can I act on that right now? Can I actually do that? Because I think if they ask that question, ask that hard question internally, they would hear a lot of no's. We work with an oil and gas company. They're in the oil and gas exploration and extraction business. They're considered one of the leaders in their space. And their CEO has a tablet that has a dashboard that is every key metric in the business, from discovery through extraction, through all the way up to refining, which is the last thing they hand off to. And he can, at a moment's notice, based on the data from the day, know how the business is doing. That company actually claims to make more revenue per employee than anyone else in their business. You think about that. Think about how that might apply in your business, whatever it is. That's the place we need to get to. And when we have conversations about data and data tools and data infrastructure, that CEO will have that conversation with us alongside the CIO, just like they would if they were talking about supply chain or go-to-market or any other part of their business.
So maybe you can describe the MemSQL Helios product and what customers are using that for.
It's a great question. So we announced the product today. So MemSQL Helios is in what we call public preview. We have been looking at the database as a service market for quite some time. And we are, as I talked about before, we're a cloud native operational database, right? So what do I mean by cloud native? We're a distributed architecture. We were designed to make use of VMs or containers or commodity hardware and operate at high performance. And more than 60% of our customers were running us in cloud, in the public cloud, not counting private cloud instances, not counting hybrid. And so the big question that we kept getting was, can you run it for me? Right? Can I just buy it on consumption? And we held back for a while. Actually because of the other innovations that were happening in cloud, and then also waiting to see when we started to see momentum around operational data. That time is now, right? So the data is moving. We've been able to leverage a lot of great work being done in communities like the Kubernetes community, so that we now have a fully managed, available service of all the full features of MemSQL running literally at the click of a button. So press a button, in moments you have a cluster up and running. It has all of the features, none of the trade-offs, and it is fully managed to the point of where all you have to worry about is your schema and your data. Our long-term view here is, wouldn't it be great if you just had a really powerful SQL API in the cloud? We want it to be that simple. And Helios, this first release of Helios is the first step of that.
Great. So where do you see MemSQL's fit in the huge spectrum of database companies?
So we believe there's a fundamental change occurring. And it used to be that the database world was broken into OLAP and OLTP. Companies like ours, we're categorized sometimes as NewSQL, the sort of third wave of database innovation. First being the traditional database innovation that occurred with Microsoft and Oracle before them. The next wave with NoSQL, which was really about serving the developer. This NewSQL movement is about bringing those two worlds together into the modern age. And we first saw the collapse of OLTP and OLAP under NewSQL into translytical, is what some people call it, or every analyst firm has a fancy way of describing it. But really, what we see is not that old language. What we're really seeing here is a bifurcation between historical data and working with historical data. Think data warehouses, think data scientists working with pools of data, or in regulated industries, think regulatory and compliance, logging of everything, right? Because you need it. And then operational data, that mix of streaming, real-time, and historical data that you're working with right now to either run apps or analytics. That's our world, and that's where we're focused. And what we're seeing here is this new wave of apps and analytics that are being built require infrastructure like that. Our long view here is we want to be the go-to choice for operational data if you care about being multi-cloud. We think the cloud service providers all have very solid solutions in this space. They will continue to innovate in their categories. We see things like Aurora and Spanner and Azure SQL as the same. We're all on the same journey. We want to be that multi-cloud alternative to those things. We think we have the right engineering talent to do it. We think we have the right customers to do it, who are driving us. 5 of the top 10 banks in North America are our customers, running critical applications and pushing on us for what's next. And long term, what we think the potential here is to start replacing all that legacy stuff. So, we see a lot of customers switching to MemSQL from Oracle. We see a lot of customers switching to MemSQL from SAP HANA, from other legacy databases like that. When you converge the new apps and analytics, you converge this real time, you converge streaming and historical data into one decision, layer in things like models, and then layer in cloud, there's a massive opportunity for someone to take over that market, and we want it to be us.
Great. Well, thanks for your time today.
Thank you.